Now it's time for the Voice for the Industry podcast.
Hello. Hey, Carissa. Great discussion with Kevin Lemasters with Action Leadership. That's his company, Action Leadership. Known Kevin forever, just been around forever. He's been a powerful force in the industry, involved at the national level, state level. He was a big Copasan guy for many years. But just to hear his passion and his commitment to just the industry and his desire to give back and help people and help business owners. There's a lot of things I didn't know about Kevin until this episode. It's really, really good.
Yeah, we always have the conversation about the industry and how great it is, and he talks about the people side of it, which I think is important and very good.
Yeah, and you can just hear and see and feel the passion he has, and it was actually pretty inspiring. And it's hard to inspire me. I'm pretty old, but anyway. All right, everybody, enjoy the episode. Hey, everybody. Welcome to this today's episode of the Voice for the Industry podcast. Very excited. Our guest is Kevin Lemasters. For better or for worse, from Kevin's perspective, I've known him for many, many years, long time. We've spent a lot of time together in the Copasan world and a couple of MPMA Academy teams. So, Kevin, it's great to see you.
Good to see you too, Raymond.
All right, and I'm excited you're here. Let me go ahead and get your bio going here.
Yes.
Kevin's 30-year journey through pest management is providing the opportunity to participate in small family businesses as well as the corporate global world. He started as a pest control technician in 1993 and had the opportunity to work his way through different roles over the years, exiting as a partner at EnviroPest in 2020 and then making the transition to coach, trainer, and consultant. Over the years, Kevin has been invited to teach on developing leaders and building company culture, both nationally and internationally. Speaking at MPMA and state events, as well as being invited to speak to over 400 business leaders in Rome, Italy. Wow. Today, Kevin works through his Action Leadership business to help leaders and teams to grow together and build success. Kevin has been married to Kimberly for over 30 years. They love to travel and find adventures to experience all over the world. In 2022, they moved to Florida to be closer to their daughter, Chesney. A year later, their son, Eric, followed. This May, they became grandparents to a beautiful little girl named Zoa. Well, congratulations, Grandpa.
Yeah, thanks, Raymond.
How do you like that? That's pretty neat, huh?
It's amazing.
Yeah,
it is amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, I have 3 grandkids, and you always hear as you're getting older how wonderful grandkids are, and they really are.
Yeah, it's true.
It is true. It's everything you hear about how wonderful they can be. It's true.
It's the whole reason we moved down here. We wanted to make sure that we were here when that stage of life came. Yeah.
Well, and you're about 4 or 5 hours straight off I-10 from me, right? Because you're the panhandle. Yeah. You're almost down to Alabama.
Yeah, we're about just over 5 hours from Jacksonville.
Yeah. So we're pretty close. So anyway, it's great to have you here. I'm excited to talk to you today. I know you've got a lot of great things to talk about. So let's get rolling here. So you started in the early 90s as a technician. So what initially, drew you to the pest control industry, and what has kept you passionate about it? What made you decide to make it like your life career?
It's a good question, Raymond. I love that you talk about people in the industry, and you're either raised in it because your family has a business and that's what you do, or you just accidentally stumble your way in, and that's kind of what happened to me. I came out of the Army and didn't know what I wanted to do when I grew up, and was kind of jumping job to job every 6 to 8 months. And we decided it was time for us to start a family, and I needed a job that had some stability and insurance. And
that's important. Both of those are important.
That's really how, because I was working just small local jobs that didn't really have a whole lot to offer. And so I answered an ad for Orkin. And I came in and really liked the autonomy and the freedom of, being a route technician, and kind of had some control over my own schedule. This was back in the day when, we had to call all of our own jobs, schedule all of our own work. So we had a little more control over our day and that kind of thing. So I really, that's kind of how I got started. And then over the years, just getting connected with people, and just, the people side of this business, I think, is what's really kept me plugged in over the years.
Yeah. I mean, it is an industry that kind of, I don't know, it's all about helping people, and it just makes you feel good to be part of it. And, generally most of the people in the industry are pretty cool people.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great. Yeah. It's funny though, a lot of people that have been in this industry a long time started like you, like me. We just needed a job. Didn't make a conscious decision to say, I'm going to be a pest control professional. Right. And then once you get in, it's hard to, you don't want to get out. basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. It's interesting. I had worked for Orkin for about a year and a half, and the manager that hired me, I really liked. He retired, and they brought in a young guy that was a manager trainee, and he ran me off. He had been there maybe 5 or 6 months, and just the way that he did things and the way he treated people, I just wasn't having it. And so I left, and I went back out and did something else for a few months, and wasn't very happy. And I was like, man, I really liked the work of, being a pest control technician. And so probably 6 months later, I found an ad for another small local company, and it got me back in, and I never looked back.
No,
So
that's awesome. Well, I'm glad you came back. And a lot of other people are too. So hold on, I was going to choose a question. All right. So you started pest control technician. You obviously kind of moved your way up. And then you became part of the Copasan group, right? There's a lot of people that know what Copasan was, but probably nowadays there's probably a few people that don't. Copasan was a network of private pest control companies that teamed up together to service national and regional accounts to compete with the big boys like Orkin and Turbinex and all them. And we had committees and we had conferences every year for many years. So that's how Kevin and I got to know each other. But you were actually worked in the pest control for a pest control company. Then you actually went to work for Copasan, right? So kind of
that's correct.
tell us a little about like that whole part of the journey.
Yeah. Yeah. I spent most of my career at Schindel Pest Services.
That's it.
And, I came in there as a technician, moved into a service manager and then branch manager. And that was really the opportunity I had to grow up in the business, if you will. I was in my mid-20s, and, I wanted more out of life. Right. And so I worked for Brent Bowles. He's back in the industry
Yeah,
now. He
I
had
just
sold Schindel Pest,
saw
and
him.
yeah, he's
Yeah,
back.
yeah.
Yeah. So, I've stayed in touch with Brent over the years, and, he did a great job of being a mentor to me, and, brought in strong leadership development stuff for the people on our team. And so as I moved up inside of that organization, Copasan was a big part of me growing as well. I wasn't participating in any MPMA things at that time. I was involved in some state association stuff, but just at a minor level, I was helping with the education committee. But it really was those Copasan committees that played a big part for me in just learning from some really seasoned people in the industry, people that have been around for a long time, people that really knew, what this business was all about, and were willing to just pour into me. It's one of the things, I mean, I know we hear it all the time, but this is such a great industry about people sharing stuff and just being willing to help anybody and everybody.
Yeah, no, you're right. And we do say it all the time, and you hear it all the time, but it's absolutely true. And it's funny because we're also going to do an episode with Dominique Savage. We did
Nice.
we did a little pre-meeting with him yesterday, and I think it's going to be really exciting. He has got a really interesting perspective on things. So there's a lot of us old Copasan people still floating around getting stuff done, I guess. So that's pretty exciting.
Absolutely.
So,
well, I know you had David Billingsley on,
Yep.
About a month or so ago, and, David and I are great friends.
Yeah.
And, I met him when he came on with American Pest through the Copasan group. So that's how we met. And again, we've become really good friends over the years. And so, yeah, it's amazing the connections that we make out there and how important they become, in our lives.
Yeah. And those annual Copasan conferences were a lot of fun.
They were.
They were a lot of fun. So you served with Copasan. You were the president of the Colorado Pest Control Association, and you were also on the MPMA board of directors. You spent a lot of time in the industry, not just working in the industry, but supporting it, helping people. What were some of the most memorable outcomes? What do you feel like some of the things you've accomplished that make you kind of proud with being involved in all that stuff?
Yeah, I think, we've talked about the people side, and I really do, Raymond, think that's the biggest thing for me is just the relationships and connections. I'll tell a quick story about, probably 10 years ago, my stepsister's son was making a drive across the country, and he got stuck in the middle of nowhere, Ohio. And I saw a post on Facebook from my stepsister saying, "Hey, does anybody know anybody in Ohio? My son is stuck," or whatever. Well, I reached out to Scott Steckel,
Mm-hmm.
and I said, I knew, called Scott and I said, "Hey, I got a family member that's stranded. Would you help?" And he said, "Absolutely." And I share that story because I think there's probably not a single state in this country that I couldn't pick up the phone and call somebody if I needed help or if I knew somebody who needed help, and they wouldn't reach out and do it.
That's true.
You know,
Yeah.
and so that, that is powerful, and that just comes from, being involved and building relationships, and not just being there to receive and get from others, but to be able to give as well. I think, um I'm a man of faith, and I'm a big, I've got a heart to serve. And, whether I'm serving as the manager or leader or just being in the industry and just trying to give back, Kimberly and I, we look at just how we've been blessed so tremendously through this industry over the years. So, as I served with, the MPMA board, that was a great experience as well. I felt like here I was, I know David talks about, his story. David Billingsley talked about his story growing up, but I graduated in a class of 14 kids. I'm small town America in Kansas, come from a small family. And so having an opportunity to sit at the table with business owners and leaders that everybody in our industry looks up to, and, they treated me as an equal. And, at times when I was just a young kid and I didn't even think that highly of myself at the time, and yet they made me feel that way. That was powerful for me, Raymond.
Yeah.
I mean, I won't name any names because there's a ton of names I could drop, but I
Right.
just see their faces because I just was so honored that they treated me that way.
Yeah.
And, that was just, that's meant a lot to me over the years. So, whether it was with, some of the Copasan committees that I was involved with, whether it was the MPMA board, when I moved into Colorado, a little over 12 years ago, I got involved with the association. They had really begun to get some good traction out there, but there were still some opportunities. And so as I came in as president, we created the Issue Defense Fund, and to help us fund a lobbyist, because we were seeing a lot of change in the legislative landscape in the state of Colorado at that time. And so I was really involved with the public policy committee with the MPMA. We started some committees in our state association as well. And so I got involved legislatively. And, I think that was probably one of the biggest things when I look at my career, and the impact was helping to lay the groundwork for House Bill 1328, which was the bedbug bill that was passed. And, that bedbug bill has become kind of the draft legislation for other states to get that, out, to address that. So I think that's probably one of the big things out there that I think it wasn't just me alone. It was, me working with MPMA, me reaching out to some other, dynamic legislative guys I know in the industry in different states, and leaning into them, and, helping us to get that across the finish line.
Yeah, but I mean, you were, I'm sure you were the driving force, and impacting legislation is probably one of the, if not the single, but one of the most important things you can do in this industry, because we all know what legislation can do, and how much damage it can cause. But it's funny, you say about how you're just this little guy, grew up in the middle of nowhere, and now you're in this environment where you're with these big business owners, and you're sitting at the table with them, and they're joking with you. I feel the exact same way. And I have a saying where I say, like, a true friend is somebody you call at 3 a.m. and say, "I'm in jail, please come get me out," and they'll go, "Hold on, let me get my pants," right? That's or shorts or whatever. And there's a lot of those people in this industry. To your story, like, I think even Scott Steckel would bound me out of jail. But
absolutely.
But anyway, no, it is true. It's true. They're just, I love Pest World for a lot of reasons, but probably the main reason is there's people there that I only get to see once a year, that I've known for 15, 20 years. So it's really great to be able to know all these people, all these years that I've met through all these different scenarios, just like you. And then you get to see them again. And it's such a wonderful thing to be part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I stole your episode. Sorry, I'll be quiet now.
No. It's the power of this industry, right?
Yeah.
And I'm thankful that I get an opportunity to, to be a part of that, and when I have, people reach out to me, and I start visiting with them, and I'm like, let me tell you a little bit about myself. And they're like, "Oh no, I know who you are."
Yeah.
And it just, that's humbling to me, because, I don't see myself that way. And so when I feel like people, see me in a different way, that I've made an impact on this industry, right? And people know that I care about the things that I do, and how I show up. that matters.
Sure it does.
That's
Absolutely.
we talk about legacy, right? I mean, I want to be remembered for the guy who's given back, for the guy who you can call at 3 a.m. and will come get you out of jail, right? So
yeah, but my only problem is I turn my ringer off. So if you call me, I probably won't hear the phone. Just a fair warning. You might have to call a couple of times. Anyway, no, it's also true. It's very true. All right. So speaking of giving back and helping the industry, you started Action Leadership in 2017, give or take, right? In business coaching and consulting within the pest management industry. What made you, two-part question, what made you decide to kind of take the leap? That, like, I'm sure a lot of people have thought about being a consultant. Not everybody does it. So what made you take that leap? And then tell us what Action does. What makes, why should people want you to come help them?
Yeah, good question, Raymond. You know, I started Action Leadership back in 2017 when I was in Colorado running EnviroPest. I had a great leadership team. I had a great team as a whole in EnviroPest. We were getting it done, and my two key folks really ran that business for me. And so I did my best, over the years. I talk about leadership, right? And I talk about growing and developing leaders. Well, it's not just something that I say. I'm intentional about it, and so I poured into my folks, and like I said, they were really running the day to day, and I had some freedom and flexibility to be involved in the community. So I was serving on the board for our local chamber of commerce. I sat on the city council. I sit on the board for a couple of nonprofits in our community, and just tried to again serve and find ways to give back in that area. And in doing all of that, I started having some local small business owners reach out and say, Kevin, would you come in and help me solve some problems? We're struggling. We see the success you're having. Would you come help? And
these are just different kinds of businesses, right? Not just
different businesses. Yeah. Not pest control businesses at all. And so, I needed to create, when I started, I just was helping them just because from a mentorship standpoint. Well, then it got a little deeper, like, hey, like we need you to be in here and like do some deep dive strategic, work stuff. And so I'm like, well, I probably need to charge you for that. So I created Action Leadership to have kind of have a vehicle, if you will, to work that stuff through. So that's kind of how it got started. And, used it that way for a handful of years. And then when we were exiting the business, and we sold to Anti-Cemex about 5 years ago, and so I kind of turned that off because I was focused on all the due diligence stuff and really making sure that we made that transition. Because once Anti-Cemex became part of the plan, and that exit happened, man, they dumped rocket fuel in the tank, and we were off and running. We more than doubled that business in the next year through acquisitions and some other stuff. And so I didn't have time for anything but just to focus on, what we were doing in house. And so we did that. And then as I transitioned out, like many owners do after the fact, my wife and I wanted to move down to Florida to be, closer to our kids. And I got down here and wasn't quite sure what I was going to do, Raymond. I really didn't. I kind of felt like I wanted to do something local in the community and stay plugged in. And so I tried to get something off the ground, and I had no success. I could not break into the local business community. And so I was hosting events, spending money, getting in the chamber, doing all the things that have always worked for me in the past and just weren't working for me here. And while that was going on, I started getting people in the industry calling me and reaching out and saying, hey, Kevin, would you help me with this? Would you help me with this? David Billingsley reached out and said, hey, I'm going to bring this mid-level training program, this mid-level manager program that we had at American. I want to bring it to the industry, and I want to get it out there to help people. Would you help facilitate some of that? And I said, absolutely. So I kind of got pulled back in, and, I just look back and I'm like, that was God's way of showing me that he had a path for me. Like, there's a reason you spend all this time in the pest control industry, and you're not done there yet. So let's get back to work, and it's been an interesting journey over the last couple of years. I've had the opportunity to work with some people that I know. And I've had an opportunity to meet some people and work with some people that I don't know. And so it's been interesting and challenging all the same. So yeah.
Wow, that's
kind of what we do. So I do some workshop stuff. I really enjoy workshop related things around just growing people and growing and developing managers and leaders. I do some assessment type work that has some workshops tied to it. I do some one-to-one coaching. Probably uh, some of the most fun work that I do is coaching the next generation owners. So it's the kids of the owners of the business, whether it be second or third generation.
Right.
Helping get them coached up so that they're ready to take over and work in that. And so, and that dynamic from generation to generation is really interesting. This past year, I had some things come up that really challenged me. I was like, man, I'm really struggling trying to help this person get to where they need to be. And I reached out to um, a business owner that they have 4 or 5 generations in the business. And I said, hey, can I bend your ear a little bit? I'm working with some people who are, not quite as, far in the generational thing as you are, but I need to understand from your perspective, like, what are some of the things that you've seen happen that, and so again, digging back into or leaning back into
Right.
people who are willing to share. And I really learned and understood some things that I just hadn't thought about before. And so, just yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah.
Again, just trying to help people move forward and helping people solve problems. And
Well, I mean, I could tell
yeah,
you have a great time. It's just the way you're
no,
enjoying
it's
yourself. It's pretty obvious. That's great. That's fantastic. I mean, and, I'm sitting here listening to you and I'm thinking, okay, I don't know exactly how old you are, but I'm going to say you're mid 40s, whatever. You kind of left your
look at you.
Then.
Oh,
Back when however, I don't know how old you are. It doesn't matter. But anyway, you kind of left your business, moved to a whole nother state. You got like kind of like a new opportunity to kind of do what you want to do, right? I'm just thinking like, that's pretty cool that you got that was,
yeah,
you were able to kind of restart and redirect
yeah,
and that you kind of thought you go this way. And then all of a sudden, no, there's bigger things over here. And,
yeah.
it's really fascinating. I think, let's see, I'm sorry, I got to flip the page for the question. There we go. So, okay. So you do a lot of like management workshops. You help develop leaders. You help develop next generation owners as leaders, which is not always an easy thing to do. That's for sure. So what do you see as the biggest pain points small, mid-sized companies face? What do you, when you're out there helping these companies, what are you running into that seems to be maybe a few common things or something you can maybe give somebody a couple pointers on that you just kind of consistently run into?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think I find it interesting the lack of systems and processes with some companies. I mean, I'm over the last couple of years, have been a couple of people that I've talked to. Some of them I'm working with, and others I'm just friends with, and we've had some just general conversations. But to find out that they don't have clear SOPs and job descriptions, and they may be on a CRM platform, but they're not using the technology that's there, and it's like they try to take the steps to get where they need to be, but because they don't know what they don't know,
Right.
they're afraid to take that next step. And so, again, I'll go back to it's one of the things that I value about our industry is I've had the opportunity to, because I know so many people, to be like, you know what? I don't know the CRM that you're on, but I know somebody who does.
Yeah.
And so let me connect you, and I'll reach out to somebody and say, hey, would you mind if I connect you with this person, and maybe you'd help them with some things. And so that's been really beneficial, is to help make those connections, to be able to, bridge that gap, because I don't try to pretend to know all the things and all the answers that somebody needs. I know I'd like to believe I know where my space is, and my sweet spot, and
Right.
where I can really help people. And the things that I don't, I've tried to get to know some of the other people in the space like me that have stepped out of the day to day and they're doing something else.
Right.
And they provide some great resources. And so I've tried to get to know them and know specifically what they do, so that when I meet somebody that needs what they have, I can make that connection for them.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I agree with you. You see that a lot. I think, these, you get people that maybe person's a technician or a service manager somewhere, and they say, I'm going to start my own business, and they're focused on, and I even see this in a lot of bigger companies. There's not as much of a focus on admin in general. Admin isn't as important, right? Well, admin is collecting the money that you need to pay your bills. Admin is having to everything depends on admin. You can do all the production you want, right? But if you don't put it, if you don't process it. So to your point, I think that's kind of, a lot of people focus on training and techs and the operation side of the business, and they lose a little bit on that other side. So I think that's very, very valid and pretty accurate from my experience as well.
Yeah. Well, I think the other piece of that is, and David mentioned this when you had him on a month or so ago, it's that mid-level training manager piece, right? I talk about this in the new training program I'm getting ready to roll out here in the next month or two. We do a pretty good job when we hire people to train them in the front lines, whether it's, admin or field work. We've got a job description, we've got a training plan, we run them through all that. But then when they get that first promotion to lead or supervisor or whatever that next step is in your organization, we just say, here's your
Great
raise,
job.
here's your title, knock them dead, kid. Right. And instead of having, some of those basics, and I think, that's why David wanted to bring that mid-level manager training program, into our industry, because it provides some really basic, building blocks for people to really, like, some self-awareness, self-regulation, things that, unless you're individually just driven for, self-growth and leadership development, you're not listening to podcasts or reading books that are helping you to understand and how to grow in those areas.
Right. Yeah, no, and you're absolutely right. Like you said with David, we talked about, it's like, you have a really good technician. So what do you do? Oh, make him a supervisor. Well, he may not be a good supervisor just because he was a good technician. It's a different skill.
Yeah.
It's a different
It's
skill.
true.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
it's like, a lot of people they'll take their best, CSR or their best technician and have him be their trainer.
Right.
Well, they may not even be a good trainer.
Exactly. You're absolutely right.
Your average technician may be your best trainer because they do a better job of explaining, being intentional about helping that person take that journey with them.
Absolutely. Well,
And so it's just being aware of all of those little steps along the way, and as a good leader, as a good manager, paying attention to those things and building them out as you go.
yeah. Well, if you think of the most successful coaches in history, not many of them were really famous players.
Yeah.
Right? They weren't the best players, but they're the really good coaches.
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
So you mentioned you've got a new training or leadership development thing coming out. Why don't you tell us about that? We'll kind of wrap up with that.
Yeah. I mentioned, I'm facilitating some of these leader workshops. And as people are coming through that program, they exit after a year. And we've had a number of people ask, what's next? This is great, but, what's that next step? And, we try to recommend some things that they can do internally and that type of thing. But I think, like anything else, people are looking for a program or a process or a system, something out there that can help them get there. And so I, a little over a year ago, I started thinking about, what does that look like? And my goal was to try to get something launched out by the end of last year. And I had a lot of things come up the first of the year and kind of got things kind of put on the back burner. And then this spring picked it back up. And by Pest World, I'm going to roll out the PCO Leader Academy. And so the PCO Leader Academy is specific to our industry. My wife, as well as the people who helped me put this together, were like, Kevin, why did you make this so specific to the pest control industry? Because this works for everybody. It's good for every industry. I'm like, well, but my heart is for the pest control industry. So, and I'm sure there's probably enough opportunity to keep me busy enough that I don't need to, venture outside of that. Right. So it's an 18-month program that really is designed to train the trainer. So my goal in bringing this program is you bring one or two of your key people through. It's an 18-month learning process. So they have, weekly micro lessons that they go through. It's all online, workbook assignments to kind of reinforce what they're doing. And then we come together on a monthly basis. We have a cohort for an hour and we just talk about what you learned, help to answer questions, some of those things. And then, at the end of the 18 months, you graduate the program. And then you have the opportunity to be the trainer for your company. Wow. So now your company can access the platform. You can run your people through, and your person who went through is now the one training, and they can do it at their own pace. It doesn't have to be 18 months. Right. They could do 2 a month. They could do 2 sessions a month instead of 4 sessions a month, and make it a 3-year program, or whatever it is they want to do. So, but they'll have access to be able to do that inside of their companies. And so, again, and it starts with, we have it broken into 2 different areas, and it's leading yourself and then leading others. So we start with the first 5 categories, and it's all about self-awareness. And we talk about mission and values and, vision for your company. And it allows you to personalize that. So, some smaller businesses, they've never taken the time to put those things together.
Right.
And I really believe that mission, vision, and values are the foundation for really growing and building leadership and building a great organization. You know, without your mission, how do you even know why you're there or what you're doing every day, right?
Right.
And then our values, I've always talked about values being a compass. You know, when I was an enviro pest and we were growing our business, we really empowered our people to make decisions in the field and in the office, and we wanted them to be able to have that freedom and flexibility to do that. And the way that we were able to achieve that was, we had clearly defined values that we talked about all the time. And so when our folks were like, "Well, how do I know that I'm making the right decision?" So, well, ask yourself, does it align with our
Right.
values? Does it align with our mission? If it does, then it's the right decision. It might be different than the one Kevin makes, but that's okay, as long as it's right for the customer and it aligns with who we are as an organization. And so when you don't have that, you're leaving it up to the person to just self-interpret.
Right.
And, we all know how different people are, right? I mean, we all think differently. We're all wired differently. And so we've got to have these guardrails, if you will, in place. So we cover
sorry,
that.
I don't interrupt you, but I was just thinking, when you said that, I was thinking bowling with the gutter. That's what I was thinking, right? you put that up so that they may go different directions, but they're always going to stay in that lane. Sorry to interrupt you.
Absolutely. No, you're good. But we talk about, we get into communication, we talk about assessments, and just the value of understanding people and how they communicate and how they're wired. So just all of those things, and just understanding yourself and how you lead yourself well, how you show up well. I talk a lot about listening. Good managers listen well. Good managers ask a lot of questions. And so we talk about what that looks like, and how you can begin to change some of your behaviors, as an individual and as a leader, so that you can show up better. And then we transition into managing and leading others. Okay, this is the piece we talked about earlier, right? We expect a great technician who shows up every day to be able to supervise others well. Well, guess what? I don't know how many times I've heard over the years from supervisors and managers, well, why don't they just do it like I do it? Right?
Right.
Well, because they're not you.
Right.
They're not wired like you, right? And so, beginning to understand, how that people are wired differently, then it just helps you to show up better and begin to manage and lead other people. And so, again, we just get into a lot of just it's basic blocking and tackling stuff.
But it's important. It's really important.
It's giving them simple resources to go back to. And again, it's a 3 to 5 minute video, and then there's a workbook that goes along with it. And so once you're through that, you can always go back and reference it again. So, if you're managing people, and, you run into an issue after you've been through this program, you're like, you know what? We covered that, and you can go back and pretty easily find that resource, because they're all broken down into bite-sized pieces with the titles on them. So they're easy to go back and locate and find. And then, because there's 53 micro lessons in the whole program. So there's a lot of topics that we cover, but we break them into just simple pieces, and, support that with the workbook stuff that goes with it.
Oh, that sounds really.
So I do. I recommend a lot. I recommend a lot of books throughout the program. I don't require anything, because I can't make you read a book.
Right.
But I remind people, leaders are readers. I didn't start off reading. I'm a high school graduate, went in the Army, and then went to work. I didn't have any education after that, and I didn't care to read. I probably didn't pick up a book for 10 years, and then people started referring books to me. And as a young manager, probably one of the most powerful books anybody referred to me was called First, Break All the Rules. And it talks about how you have to manage people the way they need to be managed, not what's natural for you and how you want to manage people. And, as a guy who was, probably 28, 29 years old at the time, again, I needed that book
Right.
because I was trying to manage people the way that I wanted to be managed.
Right.
That didn't work for
Right.
everybody.
Right.
So
No, that's fascinating. It sounds like a really good program, and it sounds like very needed program. And there's always a lot of discussion in this industry about employees and keeping people and finding people. Well, here's an opportunity for owners and managers to invest in their people, right? Make them
yeah,
better, do some of the things, align them culture. So I think it's great. It sounds really exciting. And
yeah,
I'm sure a
no,
lot of
it's
people will be interested in it. What's it called
yeah.
again? Say it again one more time.
The PCO Leader Academy.
PCO Leader, and it's all online.
Yeah,
There's no face-to-face meetings.
correct. Yeah, it's all online. The monthly cohorts will be a virtual meeting, but again, it's just to reinforce kind of
Got it.
what that learning process is. So, and it's it's because it's short enough. I mean, somebody could be in the field on their phone or
Right,
doing
right.
it mobile or whatever. So we've tried to make it really the platform user friendly from that perspective. And again, it's industry focused and not just field operations. I mean, I talk about the admin side because again, it goes both ways, right? We need leadership in all aspects of our business. And so it doesn't matter if you're in sales, if you're in admin, if you're in service, the management and the leadership skill sets, it's the same across the board.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
yeah.
Well, that's great. Well, that's exciting. Well, listen, this has been a great episode, a lot of fun. We're going to wrap this thing up. Any parting thoughts? Any things we didn't cover, or anything you want to share with the world that we didn't talk about?
Yeah, I don't know. The one thing, I guess one other thing that I'll mention, we talk about giving back. MPMA has the foundation, and the foundation has a lot of scholarships out there that are available for people. So if you don't know about that, if you're listening to this podcast and you know somebody who has a kid that's needing some college money and is looking for some scholarships, MPMA has a resource for that.
Okay.
Kimberly and I last year we set up the Masters Talents Foundation scholarship, and so go out there and find some of those opportunities. As I grow and build the PCO Leader Academy, I'm looking for ways to give back as well. So we're looking to partner with some of the things that MPMA is doing and our industry is doing because. Again, Kimberly and I, as a whole, we have a heart to give back, and we're just trying to find opportunities to do that. We want to make sure that we're making an impact on people because this industry has made such a great impact on us.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah. Okay, everybody, you heard that. All the 10 people listening, go get scholarships from MPMA. MPMA has a lot of great stuff. They really do.
They do.
We're actually working to expand our relationship with MPMA, and I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, okay. Well, thank you. Now we're going to wrap this thing up with a couple fun questions. We're going to bring Carissa back. I think she's coming back. There she is.
Yep.
Hey, Carissa.
Hello.
All right. So Kevin, this is the part where we do kind of something goofy. So we got a couple questions. So I'll ask the question, and since I know what the question is, I'll answer first to give you guys time to think of an answer. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Here we go. And you already. I'll say this later. So here's the question, right? Would you rather be able to talk to animals or be able to speak every language on earth fluently? I'll answer. I think I would rather be able to talk to animals because I think you can really get a lot done in the world if you could control some animals. And I love animals too. I'd love to be able to talk to my cats, find out what they really think about me when I don't feed them. All right, who wants to go first? Ladies second. Krista? You go first. Go ahead. Sorry, you're the guest.
Yeah, it's easy for me. I want to speak all the fluent languages.
Yeah.
I'd love to be able to. I mean, I love to travel, and so to be able to go anywhere and everywhere I wanted to go, and be able to speak that language and make that connection with people, that would be amazing.
That's a good
Yeah.
answer. Krista?
I agree. I would like to speak all the languages. I think that would be really cool.
Yeah. I mean, I would love to be able to speak all languages too, but I had to choose one or the other. I think I would go with the animals just because.
So can I start calling you Dr. Doolittle? When I see you?
Absolutely. With the old push me, pull you. Yes, I remember that. Yes. That's pretty funny. That's a good question. All right. Well, I think that's it for today. This has been great. I mean, I really. What do you think, Carissa? You were listening. Pretty good stuff.
It was a great conversation.
Great conversation, Kevin. I really appreciate it. You have you bring a lot of, like you said, a lot of spirit, a lot of heart. You're a great guy. I've known you for a long time. And so anybody out there needs help with their business, this gentleman could definitely help you.
Thanks, Raymond. Appreciate that.
Thanks for being on the show. Have a great day. Thank you for joining us.
See you next time.